we're gonna pull our mask off, I guess, and then we got us all.
Oh, thank you. The lights make it warmer.
Well, Dawn, I am excited to be here. So we have a series of conversations called Rebrand Black, and it's really about talking with thought leaders around Black innovation, Black culture, and really trying to, in this moment, I think we have a moment now where we have the world's attention.
Right.
Everybody's at home.
Right.
We have COVID-19 happening. There's a lot of social injustice things that are happening. And so I'm excited to sit down with Dawn Comer. And so for people who might not have heard of you or know what you do, can you give just a little quick backdrop, in terms of like your background?
Sure. I'm happy to be here, Haj, so thanks
Okay.
for having me today.
Yeah.
I'm Dawn Comer. I work for the City of Los Angeles. I'm currently in the Information Technology Agency I've worked on a variety of things, smart city strategy. You and I worked together on Rebrand LA, so helping small businesses get connected, which became so important as COVID started. And then, but my title right now is Broadband and Digital Inclusion Coordinator. So I'm very focused on trying to address the digital divide within the City of LA. Prior to coming to the City of LA, I spent 20 years as a management consultant at IBM, and just did a variety of things working across industries, the electronics industry, consumer products industry, media and entertainment. And I can say that it was my last 5 years there working in digital transformation. That was the perfect segue to coming to the city, to looking at how we provide services in a digital manner and a digital economy. So making sure that we can reach residents with services in a new way using technology and data with an eye on equity.
Okay, no, that's amazing. So last time me and you had a chance to talk, and so the world was different. So I was in LA, it was in February, I think about the 24th, 25th of February, working on a piece with, I think it was like District 8, and getting small businesses offline.
CD9,
online.
District 9.
Okay, District 9, let's get it right, Let's get it right. And so now, so fast forward to now, so back then the city was open, the world was open.
Right.
So now we're in November. Can you kind of bring us up to speed in terms of some of the challenges that are happening in the city of Los Angeles? Because I'm assuming that some of the same challenges that you're seeing here, other cities are also seeing. So we're kind of curious to be able to kind of get a feel of that.
Yeah, definitely. We were all open in February, and then March, unfortunately, COVID-19 happened, and we're still in the midst. But I think one of our biggest challenges was taking city services virtually, and taking city workers out of the office and being able to still keep the city running from a remote operations perspective. And so in my department, a lot of that fell on ITA with respect to making sure employees could dial in remotely, not dial in, but access. I'm dating myself.
AOL.
Access work remotely, because most people were in the office every day, all day. So there was a lot of that. One thing that I definitely helped with, and it helped me learn a lot more about the city, was getting our public meetings to a virtual space. So that's one thing, like city commission meetings. So if you think about every department across the city, and the city of LA has 30 plus departments, and there are public agendas where the public's allowed to comment. Normally the public comes in person to those meetings. So how do we switch to a mode where we can still allow the public to participate according to our Brown Act rules? And I'm sure every city had that same challenge. So city council meetings, we had a team that's completely focused on our city council meetings. I think one of the advantages for city council is that it was already broadcast via our city channel 35. But the commission meetings, they weren't necessarily all broadcast. Many people may have dialed in to hear, but not necessarily dialed in to provide public comment. And so we wanted to preserve that.
You know, I think it's hard enough for a startup or a small business to say, okay, all right, so we're used to having everybody in a room or in an office, you can count attendance. I can't even imagine a city now having to figure out how do we now come up with a remote/distributed work plan and think about, like, how long did it take for, like, at least to be able to kind of wrap your arms around the strategy and then start to deploy it in terms of, like, getting people comfortable from working home, or getting managers in the city comfortable with not physically seeing their, you know, like their actual teams.
Right, yeah, so you're speaking to the tech part of it, and then the people side of it. Mm-hmm. So thankfully, the city had already been making plans and, you know, had some steps in place mm-hmm. for remote access. Mm-hmm. So I think the tech part wasn't as difficult to transition to.
Okay.
But it is the people part of making sure that everyone's accountable, making sure that there is that trust. And what we found is that people are still productive, if not even more productive, in the remote environment. So it's definitely been a transition. Mm-hmm. Some, you know, people were used to an IT department being able to come and help you hands-on in person. So making that switch to helping you remotely, you know, there are definitely some people that I just had to, you know, handhold, and it was fine, you know, because it made me think about digital inclusion or digital divide, even from an internal perspective of people who were just used to coming to the office every day.
Yeah, because I can imagine having 3 to 5 generations of people on a workforce and how they approach their job or their comfort level in terms of digital literacy. Obviously they understand their job and they're experts at that.
Right.
But the whole digital literacy of, okay, how do I share screen? How do I access files that are in a cloud or things like that? Or, you know, turning, you know, all those small things. So that's interesting. So now we're having a conversation previously about the impact to education and students.
Right.
I know I have a 10-year-old daughter. She's doing virtual school, and it's interesting because, like, 5th grade math, like, me and my wife are engineers. This stuff is like, this 5th grade math is for real.
Right.
So I'm really interested in finding out what were some of the challenges, especially in communities where there are a large concentration of people of color, like Black people and other, you know what I'm saying, like Latino, like the challenges that they had in terms of access and online and stuff like that.
Right, definitely. So one thing that we did right away, which I'm excited about, is we were able to launch a site, getconnectedlosangeles.lacity.org. Yeah, getconnectedlosangeles.lacity.org. Mm-hmm. And so that site provided a lot of the information about low-cost and no-cost internet services mm-hmm. that were provided by the telcos at the beginning of COVID.
Okay.
We understand the challenge is that not everyone was online, so mm-hmm. not everyone may have been able to find the site, but we worked with our Channel 35 to distribute the information.
Okay.
And also working through some other departments to make sure that material was shared in another fashion than just providing an online site. But a big concern was making sure that many communities of color where people may not have broadband connectivity in their homes, may not have devices, are able to gain access to those things. So we worked with telcos and also some other partners across the city. Human IT, which I know is also starting to do some partnerships in Detroit mm-hmm. with getting devices at a low cost, and also helping residents find finding the right mm-hmm. low-cost services, because sometimes, you know, it may be confusing when you call mm-hmm. and you're trying to get that plan that's promised to be $10 a month or $20 a month, and you're not getting the right, you know, mm-hmm. representative on the line for that service. So it was a lot of partnerships across with telcos and with nonprofit organizations to try and meet the need of students, as well as students who had just recently graduated and were still looking for jobs.
Okay. Also, too, so I want to unpack a little bit. So I know when we were talking a little bit about some of the challenges that students and families have, you brought up an interesting point of if a family had more than one child and maybe the ratio of devices to students. Can you kind of share that just a little bit more? Because I think it's really interesting in terms of, because for some families in maybe a more affluent communities, it's not even an issue. So can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Sure, and it's interesting because before COVID hit, I would always talk about accessibility, maybe for a family of internet speed. If you have an internet connection at all, or maybe you have an internet connection, you feel like you don't have enough access because you have 5 devices going at one time and it's not enough speed. But now we're in a situation where if students are distance learning and there's one device being provided to that family, but they have 3 students of different ages, of different class schedules, how do we make sure or help, support them being online, being connected to definitely continue the learning process? So those are some of the challenges that we've had to address, and it kind of opens your eyes. I think sometimes we can take it for granted, just being able to have a phone or a tablet or a computer when we know learning can't really happen on a phone.
Yeah. I mean, even in Detroit, like one of the things I remember like a few years ago, we were working with some schools that were considered drop-off factories. And so even with the schools, some of them had access to devices, but they were in warehouses. They were in, but they weren't in the hands of students. Right. And so the challenge was, so you had some students that were literally doing papers on a phone. And I remember going to a Starbucks, and this was in the suburbs, right? And so we're having a conversation, and this guy who just happened to be Caucasian was like, well, these students aren't working as hard. And I said, sir, I kind of jumped into this conversation, and I was like, well, have you ever tried, so you're a consultant, you're a lawyer or whatever. Have you ever tried to do your all of your work on a phone, like on a cell phone? You don't have a wireless keyboard, there's nothing else, you're doing it all on the phone. And the challenges that actually come along with that. I couldn't even imagine what that looks like, just because we have access to quite a few devices at my house.
Right. And the other thing that we had to think about was, typically, you mentioned Starbucks. So typically we may go to a Starbucks for free Wi-Fi or go to the library. But when we all became safer at home in the city of Los Angeles, you can't go to a Starbucks, you can't go to the library. So one thing we've been looking at is working on data maps to share where connectivity exists, so where someone may access free Wi-Fi, but you have to make sure it's in a safe place. So if you look at some other cities, they use their school buses as infrastructure to provide Wi-Fi devices, and parents would go with their children and sit in the parking lots of those schools to do homework all day. But as we get to winter, like I saw that in the Midwest, so as we get to winter, that's not going to work.
That is so interesting. So that happening also in like the city of LA?
We had a pilot where it was a partnership with Department of Transportation, and I can't remember whom else, but there was a small pilot for that to test it out. And I think we walked away with a lot of lessons learned about trying to do it in a safe manner. Our pilot ended up being during one of our hottest weeks in the city. So trying to find a place with covering, even though you're outside. Yeah. So I think there are just challenges that every city faces with trying to do it. Everyone wants to make sure our students can remain connected. And it goes beyond students. One of the other things we're talking about is seniors with social isolation and making sure that they're safe. So seniors who may not be able to connect with their families, but also may not be tech savvy. So they're not going to go on FaceTime right away or use one of the home devices that allows you to connect. They need some digital literacy training to help with that. So we're also have had some conversations with our Department of Aging around some of the tactics they use, being able to share information while distributing meals on a placemat, so that if they're not online, they can at least see our website printed on the placemat, Get Connected Los Angeles site, and find out, how to find low-cost internet and also access to digital literacy training.
Gotcha. So when we're having these conversations about Rebrand Black, part of it is, how do we change the narrative around being Black or Black culture? And so the work that you're doing, like, I find it very exciting but also I think more people need to know about this type of work. Like I think we get enamored with like all of the, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like the cool, like frilly stuff that doesn't necessarily move the needle. And the stuff you're working on is stuff that, like, if these kids don't have internet access or can't do their homework, like, do they lose an entire school year?
Right.
Like, I mean, because like last year, like we lost part of last year.
Right.
Do you lose an entire school year? And then where does that go? Like, you know what I'm saying? Does that like stop, because we don't know when this thing is going to end.
Right.
And so, you know what I'm saying? So I'd be interested just to get your thoughts as it relates back to your view on how the world sees Black culture or sees our community.
Yeah, I think the world sees our community. I think there are a lot of stereotypes that are still out there, but I know that we have a lot of innovation in our community. And I know that out of this, it's a difficult time, but I see opportunity. And so I see a lot of our coffee shops, local coffee shops within LA, who have banded together and have provided meals for families. And they've partnered with some of the city organizations and or county organizations to be able to do that, as well as the council district offices. But I see innovation coming out of it, and I think we've always been innovative because we've always had to figure out how to do things maybe with a lack of resources. So I just find this as a time where we can control the narrative. We have so much technology that allows us to control the narrative. Social media has allowed us to, if you just think about how Black Wall Street was in Tulsa, but now it's online, so those things give me hope. And I know that it shows us in a different light. It allows us to shine in a different way. When I was in college, you and I were in college, we talked about NSBE before, National Society of Black Engineers, but there's so many organizations now that shine the light on Blacks in technology. Afrotech is one. There are a few others that I can't even name all of them. So I think that things are definitely changing, I think things have changed, and that we have the ability now to control the narrative.
So I have a question. So in terms of representation in other cities, do we have enough Black representation that sits in the seats that like you sit in other cities? Because I feel like there's an empathy and an understanding and a passion to make sure that services and things are equitable and that we don't leave out our community. So I'm wondering, are you a unicorn? Are there other people that exist like you? Do we need more, or?
I'm not a unicorn, I don't think. I think there are a lot of people who are very passionate about digital inclusion. In Detroit, there's Joshua Edmonds, who's the director of digital inclusion, and he's doing a lot of work. And definitely, he reached out to me, which I appreciated. There are organizations, Broadband USA, there's the Digital Inclusion Alliance, which it's when COVID hit, there were weekly calls about the topic, and even though everyone may not have looked like me, everyone's passionate about connectivity. There's an understanding that there is a lack of access in cities, in rurals, and in Native American reservations, which sometimes we don't think about. depending on your environment. But I think it's definitely important to have different perspectives at the table, so that the stories can be told, so that the input can be provided to share everyone's lived experience.
Okay. And let's kind of wrap on this one. So being a woman, being a Black woman in the space, have you seen resistance? Have there been other challenges or things that you've had to deal with that, that maybe some of your male counterparts might not have had maybe some of the same challenges?
I haven't had that. I don't feel like I've had that experience in the public sector. Definitely in the private sector.
Okay.
So I feel there are a lot of times now where I'm on meetings and I feel like it's more diverse than I've ever experienced before, and it's a welcomed experience.
Okay.
There were times in the private sector where I was the only one in the room, whether it was the only female or the only Black or the only Black female. So I've definitely stepped into a different space, and I think it speaks to solving challenges of cities. There's a realization that there needs to be diversity. There's a realization that we need to look like the constituents and residents that we're serving. So
Okay.
I definitely see that. There can always be more, especially if I look at it just from a technology perspective. There could be more Black faces from an innovation,
Okay.
those who are driving innovation. I think that continues to kind of be consistent across probably no matter what sector you're in.
Gotcha. Dawn, this has been an amazing conversation. And I know I've enjoyed working with you like so far. I know even in terms of the work that we've done with Rebrand LA, it's like you've been amazing. You've worked hard and pushed the envelope and and made connections. And I could tell how much you really cared about the work. It wasn't just about checking the box. And so I'm appreciative of that. And I know we made some definite impact. I'm looking forward to doing more things. But I want to thank you for this moment and this time. If somebody wanted to either connect with you or find out about you, or if there's some place online that they should kind of go to, where should we direct them to?
They could definitely find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So my profile is there.
Okay.
And I'm reachable.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
All right, Dawn, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. So I have to ask this, are you staying safe? Is everything good?
I'm staying safe. Everything's good. Social distancing, safer at home.
Okay.
So yeah, we're definitely concerned as COVID numbers are rising, and we hope that everyone who's participating today stays safe.
Okay.
And that their families are safe. So thank you, Haj. I always enjoy seeing you.
Yeah.
I appreciate the time, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, likewise. All right. So, Rap, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Good,
I'm glad
good.
we can make it happen.
Yeah, and thank you for being patient and